nobody warned you that the hardest part of parenting would not be the sleepless nights or the tantrums. It would be the moment you hear yourself speak to your child in a voice you do not recognize, and then spend the whole night believing it means something is wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with you, but there is something happening inside your body that changes everything once you understand it. There is a concept in psychology called the window of tolerance. A psychiatrist named Dan Siegel developed it, and it describes the zone where your nervous system can actually function. Inside that window, you can handle noise. You can absorb competing demands. You can stay patient when your 3-year-old asks the same question for the 15th time in a single car ride. But that window is not fixed. It shrinks. And for parents of young children, it almost always shrinks in one direction. Sleep deprivation narrows the window. Skipping meals narrows it. Being touched constantly for hours without a single break narrows it. The mental load of tracking every appointment, every snack preference, every nap schedule, every emotional need in the household narrows it too. There is even a clinical term for what happens with touch specifically. Being touched out. A reproductive psychiatrist has said it is so universally common among mothers that she now warns her patients to simply expect it. After birth, a mother's brain rewires itself to be hyper-aware of every sound, every movement, every signal her infant makes. That sensitivity is what keeps the baby alive. But in a modern environment, packed with competing stimulation, that same heightened awareness becomes a vulnerability. The system built to protect your child starts working against you. And there is a condition called postnatal depletion, a syndrome of nutritional, hormonal, and neurochemical exhaustion that can persist for up to 7 years after giving birth. 7 years of your nervous system running on a thinner margin than it was ever designed to sustain. So, when that window has been squeezed down to almost nothing, the next small thing pushes you outside of it completely. One more wine, one more spilled cup, one more, watch me, watch me, watch me. And your nervous system does exactly what it was built to do under threat. It activates survival mode. Your heart rate climbs, your jaw tightens, adrenaline floods your bloodstream, and you yell, or you slam a cabinet door, or you use a tone of voice that does not even sound like it belongs to you. That is not a parenting failure. That is your nervous system hitting a biological limit. And this distinction matters enormously because overstimulation and anger are completely different states that need completely different responses. If you are genuinely angry, you need to identify and process the emotion underneath. If you are overstimulated, you need to reduce the sensory input. Most parents are treating a neurological event as though it were a character flaw. Now, this is where the data gets uncomfortable. Lurie Children's Hospital published one of the largest studies ever conducted on parental sensory overload. They surveyed more than 1,000 parents, and they found that 75% of parents experience sensory overload just from daily family life, not from a crisis, not from a diagnosis, just from the ordinary, everyday experience of raising children. But the finding that stopped me had nothing to do with children at all. Married parents reported higher sensory overload than single parents, 76% compared to 67%. Let that land for a moment. Parents with a built-in support system were more overwhelmed than parents doing everything entirely on their own. Not because partners are harmful, but because another adult in the house adds another layer of input your nervous system has to process. Another person's needs, expectations, emotional state, and communication demands, all stacked on top of a system already running at capacity. Partnership brings support, but it also brings processing load. and a nervous system at its limit cannot tell the difference between those two things. Then a landmark study across 42 countries, involving more than 17,000 parents, found something that makes this even harder to sit with. The cultures with the highest rates of parental burnout were not the poorest or the most chaotic. They were the most individualistic. The Western nations, where the unspoken rule is that a good parent should be able to handle all of this without breaking. The belief that you should cope is part of what is making it impossible to cope. So if you have a partner and still feel like you are drowning, that is not ingratitude. Your nervous system is absorbing more simultaneous input than it was ever designed to handle at once. Picture a Thursday evening. She has been awake since 5:15 in the morning, the baby nursed twice overnight. The toddler had a full meltdown at daycare drop-off and she had to peel him off her leg while the whole room watched. She powered through lunch. She picked up both kids, survived the grocery store without losing anyone, and now she is standing in the kitchen while something reheats on the stove. Her daughter is pulling her arm to come look at a drawing. Her son is climbing the back of the couch, calling for her to watch. The dog is scratching at the back door. Her phone buzzes with a text from her mother about Saturday, and her husband walks through the front door and says 5 words. "So what are we eating?" She does not yell this time. She does not say anything. She just stops, goes quiet. Something behind her eyes switches off. She picks up her phone and scrolls through it while her daughter talks to her, and she does not hear a single word being said. This is the version of overstimulation almost nobody talks about. Everyone recognizes the explosion, the raised voice, the slammed cupboard. But the quiet shutdown is just as real. That flat, hollow, disconnected feeling where you are physically in the room, but not really inside your own body anymore. The clinical term for that state is hypoarousal, the nervous system dropping below the window instead of surging above it. And it is every bit as much a sign that your capacity has been completely spent. But this is not only about you. Your child's nervous system is still being built. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for managing emotions, will not finish developing until they are in their mid-20s. Until then, your child cannot regulate big feelings alone. They borrow your regulation to find their way back to calm. When they are flooded with distress, their nervous system reaches for yours the way a hand reaches for something solid in moving water. A depleted parent has nothing left to lend. This is the bind that makes gentle parenting feel impossible on the hardest days. Not because the philosophy is flawed, because the parent's capacity has already been emptied before the tantrum even begins. The advice to just stay calm during the meltdown is asking a person who slept in 90-minute intervals, who has been touched and pulled and needed non-stop since dawn, to access a biological state their body has already locked them out of reaching. You cannot give calm you do not have. And this is not just theory. Researchers tested a structured intervention for burned-out parents, designed specifically to reduce the stress load and give the nervous system room to recover. The results were measurable. A 37% decrease in parental burnout, a 36% decrease in cortisol levels, and a 28% increase in positive emotions. When you give the nervous system actual space, it heals. When you do not, it simply cannot. And now the part that matters most of all. After you snap, something happens that is more destructive than the snap itself. You do not think, "My nervous system was overwhelmed and pushed past its biological limit." You think, "I am a terrible parent," and you carry that thought into bath time, into the bedtime story, into the silence after everyone is asleep, when you lie in the dark replaying the moment over and over again. That guilt does something very specific to your body. Shame is a stress response. It activates the same system that was already depleted, and it narrows the window of tolerance even further. So the cycle tightens. Overwhelm leads to a snap. The snap leads to guilt. The guilt turns to shame. The shame narrows the window. A narrower window means a faster snap next time, and the faster snap creates deeper guilt. It loops until you are walking through your days with the window barely cracked open, certain that something fundamental inside you is broken. Nothing inside you is broken. If you carry one thing away from this video, let it be this. The snap is not what keeps the cycle alive. The shame is what keeps it going. Releasing the guilt after losing your composure is not letting yourself off the hook. It is the single most effective thing you can do to widen the window back open, so that next time you actually have the capacity to respond the way you want to respond. Letting go of the shame is not weakness. It is how you rebuild the very thing your child needs most. So the next time you feel yourself reaching the edge, try something that sounds almost too simple. Name the state out loud. I am overstimulated right now and I need 2 minutes. Say it to your partner. Say it to your children, even if they are too small to understand the words. Because naming it does 2 things at once. It gives you permission to step away without shame attached, and it starts teaching your children that having a limit is not the same as failing the people you love. You were never designed to absorb this much without a break. No human nervous system was built for the relentless sensory weight of modern parenthood, the noise that never stops, the touch that never pauses, the decisions that never let up, the emotional labour with almost no recovery built in at all. The fact that you are struggling does not mean you are failing. It means your body is responding exactly the way everybody responds when there is too much coming in and not enough time to process any of it. You are not a bad parent. You are a deeply depleted one. And those 2 things have almost nothing in common. If this shifted something for you, subscribe so you catch what comes next. And tell me in the comments what your biggest overstimulation trigger is, because someone else is going to read it tonight and finally feel a little less alone.